few years ago, if I look back, I think I would have called myself online educational technology skeptic. So I knew about how powerful the technology can be, how powerfully it can be leveraged, say in the developed world, say in the United States or whatever. But I had the view that in Africa, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, we're not ready to embrace it fully because of our unique challenges like poverty or lack of access and so on. And I also had the view that certain things, like, for example, skills development, and this is, of course, something we probably need most to build our struggling economies, that was just simply not possible to teach online. So basically that you just have to do the old way, and it's not really possible online. Now, for me, it's been a journey of discovery, as I discovered kind of the other side to this, but and as for me to discover the desperate need for online education in Africa. But I think there is a realization which was really the last straw, which broke the back of my skepticism. And this was the realization that there's nothing completely new under the sun. In the year 1440 AD, an event took place which was probably the most influential event in 1,000 years or maybe more. And it was an event, maybe I should put it this way, it was an event that God used to make a reformation of education and a democratization of learning possible. And this reformation was probably the catalyst behind the transition of the world from what is sometimes called the Dark Ages, a time where the common person on the street had little to no access to intellectual stimulus, a transition from that to the world we live in today with all its great accomplishments in the area of social upliftment or science or art or technology and more. And none of that which would have been possible without widespread literacy and access to educational material. Now, what was that event in 1440 that I'm referring to? Anybody have any idea?
1440. Is it not the first printing press?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. That was the year that Johannes Gutenberg invented a piece of educational technology. I think one sometimes doesn't think of it in that way, but that's what it was. And this is the printing press, and it spread throughout the known world in mere decades, enabling the printing of millions of copies of low-cost written material. But why do I mention this? I mention it because today we're in the early years of a new educational reformation. And this is, of course, made possible by the invention of a new generation of educational technology. And this is, of course, the online educational revolution made possible by online educational technology. Now, I call it a reformation and not a revolution, because revolutions, I believe, are by nature violent and destructive, while reformations are peaceful and constructive. So if I compare this reformation in learning to the reformation in the 1500s, my previous skepticism seems crazy. I'm sure many people were skeptical of the printing press, when it came out. They were probably concerned about the dangers that it posed. Those dangers are real. I have no doubt that there is printed material out there that started wars and destroyed nations. It's crazy, the dangers. But do you know of any institution, a learning institution or teaching institution whatsoever, that refused to embrace the printing press, which is still in existence today? I'm pretty sure that any institution of that nature became irrelevant pretty soon, and not long thereafter probably closed down. So in this presentation, I'd just like to look at four things. Firstly, I'd like to evaluate some objections to adopting online educational technology universally in Africa. and I'd like to compare that with the uptake of the printing press 500 years ago. And I think that'll be very instructive. And then I'd like to just look at a little bit more specifically at why it's vital even for face-to-face institutions and those offering skills development. And thirdly, I'd like to discuss a surprising threat to the uptake of educational technology in Africa, which I really didn't expect. And lastly, I want to show you a quick demo, but I think that I'm actually not going to manage to get to that. So sorry about that, but let's jump in as quick as we possibly can. So let's discuss some objections to the uptake of online educational technology in Africa. So firstly, in Africa, obviously in Zimbabwe and South Africa, so many people, so many even institutions are poor, you know, have very little financial resources. So many would argue that we're not ready for the online education reformation, since these people or institutions cannot afford to access technology or to learn online. Now, what if we argued like that about the printing press? That would be crazy, right? What if someone argued, no, back in the 1500s, well, no, we're not going to use printed books in our courses because people are too poor to afford them. Of course, that's backwards. The printing press actually brought down the cost of educational material to an unprecedented level. So online learning technology also makes online content even several orders of magnitude cheaper, if you could put it that way, than printed material. So we as decision makers and educators, I believe, actually do people an injustice when we underestimate their hunger to learn. I actually know of people who would literally go without meals so that they could buy more books because they had such a hunger to learn. And so also I've seen the resourcefulness and determination of people in Africa to access the internet and get the benefits. Isn't it our job to rather stimulate people, to point them in the right direction, rather than kind of labeling them and looking down on them? You know, if we argue like that, I believe we are rather poverty enablers rather than uplifters, because education can be a great source of empowerment and resources. So that's the first objection. But the second objection I often hear is that internet access is a problem. So, you know, in Africa, people don't have reliable access to the internet. So we can't adopt online learning technology because of that reason. But once again, it's very instructive to compare this with the spread of printed material in the 1500s. What if nations or educational institutions or businesses resisted the import of printing presses because they say there were no bookshops or there were no libraries or other distribution channels? Well, once again, this is backwards thinking, isn't it? Bookshops and libraries opened because there was a demand for books. Books didn't get printed because there was an existing distribution network. Books, shops, and libraries were built, and other shops began selling books because there was a demand. Distribution networks arise based on demand, and demand arises based on value. The same applies to the internet. One can't wait until every person has a reliable internet connection before creating educational value online. Creating educational value online is what will drive more people to desire and invest in reliable internet access, and companies arising to address that need. And the last objection I've heard often is digital illiteracy. So people may mention, say, learners, or even more so perhaps educators, are computer illiterate or digitally illiterate. So once again, let's compare this with the 1500s. Consider whether there was widespread illiteracy when the printing press started spreading. Of course there was. I mean, of course, people weren't literate before widespread availability of printed books. Uptake of the technology increased literacy, not the other way around. People didn't wait for people to become literate before they actually started printing books. And even in our business, we've seen such incredible tenacity and drive that people have to overcome all obstacles to learn online. We've been able, and we've been able to be creative ourselves to assist them. We've worked with students who are computer illiterate, students with unreliable electricity and internet access, students in Zimbabwe, even though we are stationed in South Africa, students who are very poor, and where people have a will to learn, people will find a way. And there's always a way to learn online. And I will argue that learning with the help of online educational technology is actually the best way we've ever had in the history of humankind to learn. But that, of course, is a bold claim. So to back that up, let us consider the next heading in this presentation, and that's the value of online educational technology, even for face-to-face institutions and those teachings, hands-on skills, you could say. You could question, in these cases, surely, I think the most resistance to adopting online educational technology we found comes from these face-to-face institutions that have no particular interest in online only education. Or on the other hand, institutions that teach very practical hands-on skills. Is online educational technology also valuable, or even, I would say, vital for them? Well, the argument goes that that face-to-face teaching is so foundational to the learning process in these institutions that there's no space for online educational technology. That's how generally it's argued against the adoption of this technology. But once again, I think it's very helpful to think of a possible situation maybe 500 years ago of a teacher or professor arguing that handwriting notes to learn from was so foundational to students' learning process and memorization that printed books were surely of no use in his classroom. Now, this is what's wrong with this argument. It's of course simplistic. We still handwrite notes to this day. Printing technology didn't replace writing, it complemented it. And likewise, no one is arguing that online educational technology will ever replace face-to-face education or hands-on training, but it can so richly complement it, and that we can no longer afford to put off this implementation, put off its implementation in Africa. In fact, the more practical the training and the more knowledgeable the teacher which is offering the face-to-face instruction is, the more value online educational technology can offer. But why is this? Well, it's because with online educational technology, you move actually lower order learning out of the classroom. Now, it actually frees up more precious, let me put it this way. With online educational technology, one can take the most inefficient, repetitive, and lowest level of learning and do it more effectively online. It actually frees up more precious time in class and in person to do higher order learning. So, for example, practical application or mentorship. Now, educational researchers, I'm sure you're very aware that they've long known that people sitting in a classroom listening to monologues, it's probably the least effective way to learn. So what if that low-level information transfer could be better accomplished online, outside of the classroom, so that the teacher can rather leverage his or her precious experience and synthesis of knowledge to stimulate discussion, or to answer questions, or to facilitate practical exercises, or to demonstrate and mentor practical skills. And at the end of this presentation, I was actually hoping to give you a little bit of a demo, hands-on, to back up, to put my money where my mouth is. But but nevertheless, let's push ahead. Besides all this, that I've just mentioned, the quality of learning, there's actually also an incredible value that one gives these students by encouraging them into a life of a lifelong learning and online self-study. It's actually a skill which is one of the most empowering and valuable skills of the internet age. If face-to-face students can be empowered to continue their learning after graduation by introducing them to online learning, there will be no limit to what they can achieve. And of course, ongoing professional development will be a breeze because you already have that connection. And we don't even have to go into, for example, happenings like COVID or so on. It's just obvious the value to a face-to-face institution to have these facilities in place. And what I've mentioned is actually, only the beginning. We can also discuss administrative efficiency. It gives incredible power. This online technology gives incredible efficiency gains for teachers and the leadership and administrators of its institutions in the area of administration. The two main aspects of a very good system for educational institution is, of course, the learning management system, or you can call it the online learning platform. That's the front end, the part of the system that the students interact with and that they actually use to learn on. And then the other very important aspect to the system is the student information system, the SIS, you could call it. The learning management system you could call an LMS, and you can use the acronym LMS, and the student information system, I'll use the acronym SIS. And on this system, on the SIS, you can facilitate all the administration, everything from the transcripts to the finances to tracking performance of the students and so on. And what makes these two systems particularly powerful are their integration. For example, all the academic setup, for example, the course shells and the enrollments and so on can be automatically pushed by the student information system to the LMS. And that saves teachers and administrators hours of busy work. And it also saves them from potential errors. And then as the semester progresses, the SIS can once again pull out the students' grades to keep track of their overall performance and administer their academic career. So also that obviously minimizes errors going in that other direction as well. And then these systems, these two main systems can then, of course, further be integrated to other learning technology or administrative technology. For example, the LMS may integrate with a teleconferencing tool like Zoom, or the SIS can integrate with an accounting system, or there can be a library management system, or the list is endless. So you can imagine that this offers incredible value to any institution, not just those interested in teaching online. It's also the learning management system also has an important role of communication to the students. For example, they have ongoing access to their grades and their academic material wherever they are. That's very important. But this background actually prompts us to discuss this unexpected threat I've mentioned. And this unexpected threat is free. Now, the threat of systems that are marketed as free is actually a threat to the uptake of online educational technology in Africa. Now, I found this surprising as I began to discover it, because surely free tools are the absolute answer to one of the biggest challenges we face, and that is poverty, right? We can adopt these systems for free. That's amazing. Now, let me just say that I'm not against free tools. I think there is a place for example, especially the smaller aspects in the educational, the institution's technological ecosystem, you could call it, especially the smaller aspects like the teleconferencing or the online office applications and those things. You know, there are some great free tools out there. But unfortunately, if the main systems like the online learning platform, the LMS, the SIS, is marketed as free, I would be very wary. And I would argue that at least in every such case that I've ever come across, using these systems have involved hidden costs that actually, if one just identifies them and actually calculates them, they far outweigh the cost of proprietary solutions. And firstly, let me just name a few. Firstly, these systems obviously offer very little to no support. And we've actually found in practice that one of the most critical prerequisites for an institution to successfully adopt online learning technology is high quality and a high level of support, especially in Africa, where every institution doesn't have a whole team of educational technologists and a whole team of staff members to support the uptake of this technology. And now, of course, they can go and hire these people, but then what's the point of using free technology? Because the human resources is far more expensive than adopting the proprietary systems. Now, secondly, the second great cost is these free systems usually, in most cases, cannot be integrated with other systems in the way that I just mentioned. That deep integration where the data goes, all the data goes from one system to the other and back. And that kind of defeats the purpose of implementing them in the first place. And thirdly, these systems free systems involve hidden risks, like, for example, all the students' data gets exported. All companies actually sell students' data for marketing purposes. And you can go into this in your own time, but basically, these companies aren't charities. If a product is free, it is not a product. There is some other product. And one needs to ask, what is the product that they are selling? And normally, if the product that you're using or the system you're using is free, the product is actually the user himself or herself, or rather their data. And fourthly, we found that the greatest motivation to implementing a system optimally and quickly is investing in it. If a system is free, what we've really seen happen in practice is that often it just gets adopted in name, but because there was no investment in it, the users do not see the value of investing their time. They didn't invest any money, so why would they invest any time to get the most value out of it? And lastly, of course, just briefly, there's no training or onboarding available to help and encourage users. And once again, the institution either has to hire these people, and then that defeats the purpose of using free tools, or the users kind of basically have to fend for themselves. But that is not helping them to become digitally literate. That is not offering them the support to actually grow in their uptake of the system. So I think I'm already over time, but let me just then offer a sentence or two of what our business offers. So in our case, and of course, in saying this, it makes it really sound as if I'm just trying to slate free technology, because we don't offer free technology. If that's the case, I'm sorry, but that's just what we've seen take place in practice. So what do we offer? We offer local implementations of a learning management system called Canvas. And this system is used by the world's top 4 universities. It's used by another 13 of the top 20 universities in the world. And I'm a little bit tired of institutions in Africa settling for mediocre technology because it's free, or really struggling with free technology, while the rest of the world is going ahead with technology that we hardly even know of. So few people have even heard of Canvas, even though the top institutions in the world are using it. And then we've also begun offering a student information system, which is currently in beta, to integrate with that system. So, but really what is way more important to us than the technology by far, the technology we use, and at some point in the future, we might offer different technology. But what is so critical for us is that we're not a provider of a product, we are a solutions partner. In other words, we partner with institutions to implement our systems for them in a way that solves their problems and offers them a high level of support, so that in a way they can get the benefit of having people on staff without having people on staff, because we have people on staff. We have the team, so that they don't have to, and they pay a small fraction of what they would pay this full-time team, and we can offer the same level of service that they would have received with that team.